Well, we're going to read it again today. So I am going to read Wilford Gordon MacDonald Partridge to you yesterday. Somebody kind of give me a summary. Somebody wanted, but so then. Somebody who? Wilford Gordon wanted
to get girls' memory
Miss Nancy's memories, but he didn't know
how to do it.
Well, he didn't know what?
Memory.
He didn't know what a memory was.
I said that.
So
He asked other people.
He asked other people, and then
He got her memory back.
He found some things to help her get her memory back. So where does Wilford Gordon live?
Next door to old people retirement.
Like a retirement home. That's right. If you could not answer my questions, it's because you weren't listening, and you need to listen.
I couldn't answer your question.
I know you weren't here, but yesterday I asked some questions that people couldn't answer. And it's because you're not listening. So I'm going to read a story that I connected, another text that I connected to this one. When I read this story, it made me think of this other book. I made a connection to another text. And it's called Now One Foot, Now the Other. All right, Brantley to Miss Mathis. It's by Tommy DePaula. He's one of my favorite authors. Brenna, you're looking up here and listening. Bobby was named after his best friend, his grandfather, Bob. When Bobby was just a baby, his grandfather told everyone, Bobby will be 3 years old before he can say grandpa, so I'm going to have him call me Bob. And Bob was the first word Bobby said. Bob was the one who helped Bobby learn to walk. Hold on to my hands, Bobby, his grandfather said. Now one foot, now the other. One of the best things Bob and Bobby did was to play with the old wooden blocks that were kept on a shelf in the small sewing room under the front stairs. The blocks had letters on 2 sides, numbers on 2 sides, and pictures of animals and other things on the last 2 sides. Bob and Bobby would slowly, very slowly, put the blocks one on top of the other, building a tall tower. There were 30 blocks.
Whoa. That's like a math problem.
Stop, Cooper. That's distracting. Sometimes the tower would fall down when only half the blocks were piled up. Sometimes the tower would be almost finished.
That's a long tower now.
Just one more block, Bob would say. And that's the elephant block, Bobby would say. And they would carefully put the elephant block on the very top. But Bob would sneeze, and the tower would fall down, and Bobby would laugh and laugh. Elephants always make you sneeze, Bob, Bobby would say. We'll just have to try the next time, his grandfather would always say.
He's pointing at him.
Then Bob would sit on Bobby's knee and tell him stories. Bob, tell me a story about how you taught me to walk, Bobby would say. And his grandfather would tell Bobby how he held Bobby's hands and said, now one foot, now the other, and before you knew it, on Bobby's 5th birthday, Bob and he had a special day. They went to an amusement park. They rode a roller coaster, ate hot dogs and ice cream. They had their picture taken in a machine, and they sang a song and made a phonograph record. And when it got dark, they watched fireworks.
That's a fun day. One time.
On the way home, Bob told Bobby stories. Now tell me the story about how you taught me to walk, Poppy said. And Bob did. You think that's his favorite story? Not long after Bobby's birthday, his grandfather got very sick. Bobby came home and his grandfather wasn't there. Bob's in the hospital, Dad told Bobby. He had what is called a stroke. I want to go see him, Bobby said. You can't, honey, Mom told him. Right now, Bob's too sick to see anyone. He can't move his arms and legs, and he can't talk. The doctor's not sure if he knows who anyone is. We'll just have to wait and hope Bobby gets better. Bobby didn't know what to do. He didn't want to eat. He had a hard time going to sleep at night. Bob just had to get better. Months and months and months went by. Bob was still in the hospital. Bobby missed his grandfather. His grandfather was his best friend and he missed him.
Maybe he died.
Did say that. One day when Bobby came home from school, his father told him that Bob was coming home. Now, Bobby, Dad said, Bob is still very sick. He can't walk, he can't move or talk. When he sees your mother and me, he still doesn't know who we are, and the doctor doesn't think he'll get any better. So don't be scared if he doesn't remember you. What did he do? Just like our other story, he
Got confused.
lost his memories. But Bobby was scared. His grandfather didn't remember him. He just lay in bed. And when Dad carried him, Bob sat in a chair, but he didn't talk or even move.
He's like,
One day, Bob tried to say something to Bobby, but the sound that came out was awful. Bobby ran out of the room. Bob sounded like a monster, Bobby cried. He can't help it, Bobby, Mom said. So Bobby went back to the room where Bob was sitting. It looked like a tear was coming down Bob's face. I didn't mean to run away, Bob. I was scared. I'm sorry, Bobby said. Do you know who I am? Bob thought he saw Bob. Bobby thought he saw Bob blink his eye. Mom, Mom, Bobby called. Bob knows who I am. Oh, Bobby, Mom said, you're just going to upset yourself. Your grandfather doesn't recognize any of us.
yeah, he's me.
But Bobby knew better. He ran to the small sewing room under the front stairs. He took the blocks off the shelf and ran back to where Bob was sitting. Bob's mouth made a little smile. Bobby began to build the tower.
He's giving him his memory back. Good idea, kid.
Halfway, almost to the top, only one block left. Okay, Bob, said Bobby. Now the elephant block. And Bob made a strange noise that sounded like a sneeze. Do you think you remember?
Yes.
The blocks fell down and Bob smiled and moved his fingers up and down. Bobby laughed and laughed. Now he knew Bob would get better. And Bob did. Slowly, he began to talk a little. It sounded strange, but he could say Bobby just as clear as day. Bob began to move his fingers and then his hands. Bobby still helped to feed his grandfather, but one day Bob could almost hold the spoon by himself, but he still couldn't walk. When the weather got nice and warm, Dad carried Bob out to a chair set up on the lawn. Bobby sat with him. Bobby, Bob said, story. So Bobby told Bob some stories. Who's telling the stories now?
Bobby.
Bobby's telling his grandfather's stories. Then Bob stood up very slowly. You, me, walk, said Bob. Bob knew exactly what Bob wanted to do. Bobby stood in front of Bob and let Bob lean on his shoulders. Okay, Bob. Now 1 foot. Bob moved 1 foot. Now the other foot. Bob moved the other.
It was really sad, but now it's getting happier now.
By the end of the summer, Bob and Bobby could walk to the end of the lawn, and Bob could talk better and better each day.
I wonder how his mom and dad feel now.
I'm sure they're happy. On Bobby's 6th birthday, Bobby got the blocks. Slowly he built up the tower, only 1 block to go. Here, elephant block, Bob said. Bobby put it on top. Bob sneezed. Elephants always make you sneeze, Bob, Bobby said. We'll just have to try the next time. Now tell me some stories. And Bob did.
That's just like Bobby said. He said again after Bobby said.
Then Bob said, Bobby, tell a story how you teach Bob to walk. Well, Bob, you leaned on my shoulders, and then I said, now 1 foot, now the other. And before you knew it,
He could walk. He's like a
there's the elephant walk. So, at the beginning of the story, his grandfather taught him how to walk. Now 1 foot, now the other. And at the end of the story, who taught who to walk?
Bobby.
I love this story. It's a great story. It is sad, but it ends up being happy, doesn't it?
I love that book.
All right. So yesterday we talked about our mental filing cabinet. What's in our mental filing cabinet? What do we call that? Everything we've ever seen, read, experienced, people. We call it, there's a fancy word for it. It's called our
Memorizing.
schema. It's your schema. It's like your filing cabinet. And I gave you the example of, you've got things that you've seen and experienced, Hudson, Jalen, have a seat. If I say the cat took a bath, do you get a picture of a cat in the shower with the shower cap on? No, you get a picture of a cat going, licking his paws and then doing this. Because you've seen a cat do that, either in a book, or you've seen a real cat do it, or you've seen it on TV. That's something in your schema. You knew what I was talking about, even though I didn't have to say, the cat took a bath by licking his paw and then rubbing it on his head. I didn't have to say that, did I? You knew when I said that. That's because that's in that filing cabinet, and your brain quickly found that experience and knew what I was talking about. So we do the same thing as we read. The author doesn't tell us everything because he knows we've got this mental filing cabinet. We've got our schema, Hudson. And we can quickly find things and know things even when the author doesn't say them. So today you're going to be listening for, and I'm just going to tell you what you're going to listen for because this is going to be what your assignment. Why is Wilford collecting all 4 things? How does Miss Nancy feel about Williford? How did Miss Nancy feel about the beach? And why is Miss Nancy sad about her brother? Even though the author doesn't tell us the answers to those directly, she doesn't say exactly. We can make an inference. We can use our schema and clues from the story to know the answers to those questions. So those are going to be the 4 questions that you're going to be listening for. The answers and the clues to help you find them. Wilford Gordon MacDonald Partridge. If you didn't listen yesterday, you better listen today. You need to quit playing and you need to listen. There was once a small boy called Wilford Gordon MacDonald Partridge. And what's more, he wasn't very old either. His house was next door to an old people's home, and he knew all the people who lived there, Maddox. Need to look up here. Shh, Brenna. He liked Miss Jordan, who played the organ. He listened to Mr. Hoskins, who told him scary stories. He played with Mr. Trippett, who was crazy about cricket. He ran errands for Miss Mitchell, who walked with a wooden stick. He admired Mr. Drysdale, who had a voice like a giant. But his favorite person of all was Miss Nancy Allison Delacourt Cooper, because she had four names just as he did. He called her Miss Nancy and told her all his secrets. One day, Wilford Gordon heard his mother and father talking about Miss Nancy. Poor old thing, said his mother. Why is she a poor old thing? Asked Wilford Gordon. Because she's lost her memory, said his father. It isn't surprising, said his mother. After all, she is 96. What's a memory? Asked Wilford Gordon. Hannah, Jalen, and Hannah and Jalen. Just Hannah and Jalen to myself. What's a memory? Asked Wilford Gordon. He was always asking questions. It's something you remember, said his father. But Wilford Gordon wanted to know more. So he called on Mrs. Jordan, who played the organ. What's a memory? He asked. Something warm, my child. Something warm. He called on Mr. Hoskins, who told him scary stories. What's a memory? He asked. Something from a long ago, my lad. Something from long ago. He called on Mr. Tippett, who was crazy about cricket. What's a memory? He asked. Something that makes you cry, my boy. Something that makes you cry. He called on Miss Mitchell, who walked with a wooden stick. What's a memory? He asked. Ha, something that makes you laugh, my darling. Something that makes you laugh. He called on Mr. Drysdale, who had a voice like a giant. What's a memory? He asked. Something as precious as gold, young man. Something as precious as gold.
He even looks like a giant. But he's not a giant.
So Wilford Gordon went home again to look for memories for Miss Nancy because she had lost her own. Kylie, I need you to sit on your bottom and look up here. He looked for the shoebox of shells he'd found long ago last summer and put them gently in a basket. He found the puppet on strings, which always made everyone laugh, and put that in his basket too. He remembered with sadness the medal which his grandfather had given him and placed it gently next to the shells. And why did he remember the medal sadly, Amelia?
Because his grandfather gave it to him.
Yeah, and what do we think probably happened to his grandfather?
He
He probably passed away. Now, did the author say his grandfather passed away? But it said he looked at it and remembered it sadly. So we can make that inference. Next, he found his football, which was as precious as gold. And last of all, on his way to Miss Nancy's, he went to the hen house and took a fresh, warm egg from under a hen. So he's got a puppet to make her something to laugh, the medal because it would make him sad and cry. He has the egg that's warm. He has the football that's as precious as gold. And he has the seashell from a memory he had.
It's And the medal. People said about their memories.
Then Wilford Gordon called on Miss Nancy and gave her each thing one by one. What a dear, strange child to bring me all these wonderful things, thought Miss Nancy. Then she started to remember.
So sometimes if old people ask
She held the warm egg and told Wilford Gordon about the tiny speckled blue egg she had once found in a bird's nest in her aunt's garden. She put a shell to her ear and remembered going to the beach by tram long ago and how hot she'd felt in her button-up boots. She touched the metal and talked sadly of the big brother she had loved, who had gone to war and never returned. She smiled at the puppet on strings and remembered the one she had shown to her sister and how she'd laughed with a mouth full of porridge.
It's porridge.
It's like oatmeal.
Oh yeah. It's really good.
She bounced the football to Wilford Gordon and remembered the day she'd met him and all the secrets they'd told. And the two of them smiled and smiled because Miss Nancy's memory had been found again by a small boy who wasn't very old either. Okay, so your assignment for the book, you're going to cut out the 4 flaps. There's 4 of them. So you have to cut this out and then you have to cut these apart because there's 4 separate ones. You put the glue here. Okay? Then that way you answer the question under the flap. Why is Miss Nancy sad about her brother? So you'll lift the flap and you'll write your answer. Why is Wilford collecting all these things? You write your answer. One word is not an answer. It's a sentence. How did Miss Nancy feel about Wilford? And how did Miss Nancy feel about the beach? The author didn't say exactly why, what happened exactly, but because you have that schema, you have that mental filing cabinet, you can make an inference from what the book said and what you know in your head and what you have in your schema to figure out the answers to these questions.
Like a piece of bacon.
Okay, Jackson, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. You're being silly. Knox?
To do with the other book, the roller coaster and stuff, I went to an arcade.
Okay, well, you'll have to tell us that story later, okay? So, you're going to take each of the boxes, you cut it out, you put the glue on this part right here so that you open up the flap and you answer the questions. Now, you can put them in your book facing each other just like this, or you can make a line of them. Just cut them all out and put a line. But you cut the whole rectangle out. You don't cut this part off. That's where the glue goes. All of this piece goes together. Okay? All right, you may go back to your seat.
Super tired.